The first thing I noticed was the padlock shining in the sun like it had every right to be there, bolted onto my utility box as if it had personally paid the electric bill for the last 10 years. The second thing I noticed was the HOA president standing beside it with a clipboard and a smile that looked rehearsed in a mirror. By the third second, I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was a declaration of war over a metal box full of wires that legally, contractually, and practically belonged to me. I had stepped outside because my internet dropped mid-call, the kind of drop that makes your router lights blink like they're embarrassed. I followed the cable line along the side of my house, already annoyed, coffee still hot in my hand. That's when I saw it. A brand new lock, industrial grade, the kind you'd expect on a construction site or prison gate, clamped onto the latch of my utility box. For a moment I honestly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to accept that someone had actually done this. Then I saw her. Karen, the HOA president, standing 3 feet away, sunglasses on, arms crossed, clipboard tucked under her elbow like a prop. 2 board members hovered behind her, pretending to look busy while very obviously watching my reaction. A small orange notice sticker was slapped crookedly on the box, like an afterthought. "Morning," she said, cheerful in the way people get when they think they're about to win something. I stared at the lock again. I tugged it once, lightly, just to confirm reality. It didn't budge. "You put a lock on my utility box," I said, more statement than question. She tilted her head. "Correction. The association secured community infrastructure." That sentence hit my ears wrong. Community infrastructure. She said it slowly, savoring it, like the phrase itself gave her authority. I looked around. My driveway. My house. My wall. My meter. Everything exactly where it had been for years. Nothing about this screamed community. "That box feeds my house," I said. "My power. My internet. My water monitoring line." Karen smiled wider. "Which impacts the community." I felt that familiar pressure behind my eyes, the kind that comes when you realize someone is either lying to you or deeply committed to a fantasy. Sometimes both. She tapped her clipboard. "We've had complaints." "From who?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer to the box and tapped the orange sticker with one manicured finger. "Unauthorized modifications. Safety concerns. Liability exposure." I leaned in and read the sticker. It was generic, the kind you buy in bulk online. No logo. No department name. Just bold words meant to scare people who didn't know better. "You slapped a sticker on it," I said. "That doesn't make it real." Karen's smile faltered for half a second, then snapped back into place. "We consulted professionals." That was my first real red flag. Not the lock. Not the sticker. The word consulted, said vaguely, with no names attached. I took a slow breath. "Remove the lock." She laughed, a quick little sound like I'd told a joke. "Oh no. That won't be happening." Behind her, one of the board members shifted uncomfortably. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You can't lock my utilities," I said. "You know that." Karen finally dropped the smile. "According to the HOA bylaws, any external equipment visible from common areas falls under our oversight." "There is no common area here," I said. "This is my side yard." She flipped a page on her clipboard, dramatic and unnecessary. "The sidewalk counts. The sidewalk. Across the fence. Across the property line. Across reality." I set my coffee down on the hood of my truck, because my hands had started shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of it all. "Unlock it," I said again, slower this time. Karen took a step back, lifting her chin. "You're not authorized to access that box anymore." That word again. Authorized. "What exactly do you think is in there?" I asked. "Electrical components. Network junctions. Hazardous materials." I blinked. "Hazardous materials." She nodded solemnly. "We can't have residents tampering with them." "Residents? like I was some renter passing through, not the person whose name was on the deed, the permits, the inspection records. My internet is down, I said. My power is flickering. You're interfering with essential services. She shrugged. Temporary inconvenience. That was it. That was the moment the absurdity tipped into something else. Something dangerous. Because people who can justify cutting utilities to make a point don't stop at lock. I pulled out my phone and started recording, not pointing it at her yet, just holding it casually. Who authorized this? I asked. The board, she said instantly. Unanimously, I pressed. Another pause. Another half-second flicker. The executive committee. Which meant her. I turned the camera toward the box, zoomed in on the lock, the sticker, the serial numbers. Then I panned to her. Say again why you locked it, I said. Her lips tightened. I don't consent to being recorded. You're on my property, I replied. Next to my equipment. One of the board members finally spoke up, voice low and nervous. Maybe we should revisit this. Karen shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. He immediately went quiet. This is about control, I said, more to myself than to her. She smirked. This is about compliance. That word echoed in my head long after she turned and walked away, heels clicking triumphantly on concrete that didn't belong to her. I stood there staring at the locked box, my phone buzzing with alerts from systems that suddenly couldn't phone home. Internet offline. Monitoring disconnected. Power fluctuations logged. Karen thought she'd won something. Thought she'd claimed territory with a lock and a sticker. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that utility boxes have rules far older and far stronger than HOA bylaws. And that when you touch them without authority, the kind of authority that comes with badges and permits, you don't just start a neighborhood argument. You start a paper trail. And somewhere downtown, an inspector was about to have a very bad day at the office, courtesy of a woman with a clipboard who thought she outranked the grid. By the time Karen's heels disappeared around the corner, my phone had stopped buzzing and started screaming. Error notifications stacked up like dominoes. Network disconnect. Voltage irregularity. External access interruption. All the polite ways machines tell you that a human did something incredibly stupid. I didn't touch the lock. Not because I couldn't break it, but because I knew better. Locks like that aren't meant to keep people out. They're meant to create evidence. And suddenly, evidence was exactly what I wanted. I walked inside and pulled the folder I hadn't opened in years from the filing cabinet. Permits, inspections, utility easements, the boring paperwork everyone forgets until someone decides to play pretend dictator with a clipboard. I laid everything out on the kitchen table, page by page, aligning corners like I was preparing an autopsy. The utility box wasn't just mine. It was registered, tagged, inspected annually. The city seal sat right there on page 3, faded but unmistakable. Clear language. No HOA oversight. No shared access. No ambiguity. Karen hadn't secured community infrastructure. She had interfered with regulated equipment. I picked up the phone and called the utility emergency line, not the general customer service number. The one meant for actual problems. I need to report unauthorized tampering, I said calmly. There was a pause. Tampering with what, sir? My service access point. Locked without authorization. Causing disruptions. Another pause, longer this time. Is the equipment marked? Yes, I said. With your department's seal. The tone on the other end changed immediately. Less script. More attention. Do not remove the lock, the operator said. An inspector will be dispatched. I smiled for the first time that morning. While I waited, I checked the neighborhood group chat. It was already blowing up. Karen hadn't wasted time. Safety update, everyone. Unauthorized utility access discovered. HOA has secured equipment until further notice. Replies poured in beneath it. Is that why my Wi-Fi dropped? Is this affecting power? Do we need to reset anything? Karen responded to each with calm authority, reassuring them that everything was under control. That word again. Control. She spoke like she'd just saved the neighborhood from disaster instead of causing one. I typed once, then deleted it. This wasn't the place. Not yet. The inspector arrived less than an hour later in a white city truck with faded decals and a dented bumper. He was older, sun-worn, and looked permanently unimpressed by the world. He didn't introduce himself with flair. He introduced himself with a clipboard and a frown. "Where's the box?" he asked. I led him around the side of the house. His eyes landed on the lock and the sticker, and his jaw tightened. "Who did this?" he asked. "The HOA," I said. He crouched, inspected the seal, the latch, the lock itself. He tugged it once. Harder than I had. "Did you touch it after they installed this?" he asked. "No." "Good," he muttered. "Because this is a problem." He stood and pulled out his phone, snapping photos from every angle. Close-ups, wide shots, seal numbers, the sticker. "Is this box listed as shared infrastructure?" he asked. "No," I said. "Single residence." He nodded, already knowing the answer. "You lose power completely at any point?" he asked. "Intermittent," I said. "Internet dropped immediately." He exhaled slowly through his nose. "They're lucky it didn't arc." I watched the realization settle in. Not just that Karen was wrong, but that she'd crossed into a different category of wrong. The kind that comes with forms and consequences. He called someone from his truck. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but I heard enough. "Yeah. HOA locked it, no permit, yeah, sticker's fake. I know. I know." When he hung up, he looked at me with something close to sympathy. "I'm going to have to issue a red tag," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "On my house?" "No," he said. "On the action." He pulled out a bright red notice from his clipboard, the real kind, heavy paper, official seal. He filled it out carefully, deliberately. "Unauthorized interference with regulated utility access." He read aloud as he wrote. "Immediate cessation required. Further action pending investigation." He taped it right over Karen's orange sticker. "That applies to the HOA," he said. "Not you." "Can they remove the lock?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not until this is reviewed. If they touch it again, it escalates." I almost laughed. "What happens next?" I asked. "They'll get a notice," he said. "Then a hearing. Possibly fines. Possibly more." He paused. "Depends how deep this goes." I thanked him, and he drove off, leaving the red tag flapping slightly in the breeze like a warning flag. I didn't have to wait long. Karen came storming down the sidewalk less than 20 minutes later, clipboard gone, phone clutched tight in her hand. Her smile was gone too. Completely. "What did you do?" she snapped before she even reached me. "I reported unauthorized tampering," I said. "You went over my head," she said. I tilted mine. "You locked my utilities." "That inspector had no right," she said. "This is an internal matter." I pointed to the red tag. "Apparently not." She stared at it like it might disappear if she glared hard enough. "This affects the entire community," she said, voice rising. "Do you have any idea what kind of liability you've created?" I almost admired the confidence it took to say that while standing next to evidence of her own violation. "Remove the lock," she demanded. "I can't," I said. "Inspector's orders." Her face flushed. "Then call him back. Fix this." I shrugged. "Out of my hands." For the first time, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not anger. Not entitlement. Fear. Because Karen had built her authority on the assumption that no one would check her work. And now someone had. Someone with a badge, a truck, and a stack of forms that didn't care how loud she talked. "This isn't over," she said, backing away. I watched her leave, phone already pressed to her ear, voice sharp and panicked. She was right about one thing. It wasn't over. But the game had changed. The red tag did something fascinating to the neighborhood. It didn't calm anyone down. It didn't clarify anything. It turned a quiet street into a rumor factory with legs. By the next morning, I had neighbors slowing their cars as they passed my house, necks craning toward the side yard like they expected to see a crime scene. A few stopped outright. One knocked. "Hey," Mark from 2 houses down said, forcing a smile. "Everything okay with the power thing?" "Depends who you ask," I replied. He glanced toward the red tag, then lowered his voice. "Karen says the city overreacted." Of course she did. Before I could respond, my phone chimed. An HOA email. Subject line in all caps. Urgent Community Safety Notice. I didn't even open it yet. I could feel the spin radiating off the screen. When I finally did, it was exactly what I expected and worse than I imagined. Karen had written 3 long paragraphs framing the situation as a proactive safety intervention that had been misunderstood by a single homeowner who refused to cooperate. No names, but it didn't need them. She warned of potential outages, legal exposure, and urged residents to support the board's authority during this temporary disruption. Temporary. Like she hadn't bolted a lock onto a regulated utility. The kicker was the final line. Residents are advised not to interfere with secured equipment until further notice. She was doubling down. I closed the email and opened another app. The utility monitoring dashboard. Voltage still unstable. The lock was doing exactly what the inspector warned it might, causing micro-interruptions that hadn't escalated yet but were heading that way. I documented everything. Screenshot. Timestamp. Logs. Then my doorbell rang again. This time it was Karen, flanked by 2 different board members and a man I didn't recognize. He wore a polo shirt tucked into khakis and carried a leather folder like it was a shield. "This is a courtesy visit," Karen announced. I leaned against the doorframe. "Is it?" The man cleared his throat. "I'm the association's legal consultant." I smiled. "Of course you are." Karen shot me a look. "We're here to resolve this before it becomes complicated." "You made it complicated," I said. She ignored that. "We need access to the box." "No," I replied. The consultant shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the red tag indicates ongoing review. Any further delays could impact residents." "You mean the delays caused by the lock you installed," I said. Karen's jaw clenched. "You're being deliberately difficult." I laughed. "I couldn't help it. You locked my utilities." Her voice sharpened. "For safety." The consultant finally opened his folder, pulling out a printed page. "According to the HOA covenants, external fixtures may be subject to inspection." "Inspection isn't a lock," I said. "And inspection doesn't mean interference." He hesitated. "We believe the box may service more than one residence." "That belief is wrong," I said. "And already disproven." Karen stepped forward, lowering her voice. "You're embarrassing the board." I met her stare. "You did that yourself." She straightened. "If you don't cooperate, we'll have to escalate." There it was. The threat she couldn't resist. "Escalate how?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "Fines. Enforcement. Legal action." I gestured toward the red tag. "Go ahead." For the first time since I'd known her, Karen didn't have a prepared response. The consultant glanced at her, then back at me. "We'll be in touch," he said, already backing away. They left without another word. That afternoon, the notice went up. Emergency HOA meeting. Attendance required. It was scheduled for that evening in the community clubhouse, the same beige room where Karen had once lectured people about trash can placement like it was a moral failing. I went. The room was packed. Folding chairs filled every inch. Karen stood at the front, flanked by the board, the consultant seated nearby like a security blanket. She launched into a speech about safety, liability, and rogue behavior. She spoke in absolute. She spoke loudly. She never once mentioned permits or inspectors. When she finished, she gestured toward me. "This situation exists because one homeowner refuses to comply." Murmurs rippled through the room. I stood slowly. "I refuse to let anyone lock my utilities," I said calmly. Especially without authorization. Karen scoffed. That box affects everyone. It doesn't, I said. And the city confirmed that. Her eyes widened just a fraction. I held up my phone and projected the inspector's written notice onto the screen. Real letterhead. Real language. Real consequences. The room went quiet. This red tag applies to the HOA's action, I continued. Not my property. Not my behavior. Someone in the back spoke up. So why is the lock still there? Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. Because she can't remove it, I said. If she does, it escalates. That word again. Escalates. The consultant leaned toward Karen, whispering urgently. She shook her head, stubborn even now. This is being handled, she insisted. We are in control. The lights flickered. Just once. Enough to be noticed. A collective gasp filled the room. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Karen froze. Phones came out. Whispers turned sharp. The illusion cracked in real time. This meeting is adjourned, Karen snapped. No one moved. She slammed her binder shut and stormed out. By the time I got home, my inbox was full. Messages from neighbors. Apologies. Questions. Fear. And one message from the city. Follow-up inspection scheduled. Expanded review initiated. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Karen had wanted control. What she'd activated instead was oversight. And oversight doesn't care how loud you talk. The second inspector arrived with a partner, and that alone told me how badly Karen had misjudged the situation. City inspectors don't double up for curiosity. They do it when they expect resistance, documentation problems, or someone who already tried to spin the story. The white truck pulled up early, just after sunrise, and before either of them even stepped out, Karen was already there, pacing on the sidewalk like she'd been waiting all night. She didn't acknowledge me at first. She went straight to them, voice low but animated, hands slicing the air in sharp gestures. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The tone was pure damage control. The inspectors listened. They didn't nod. They didn't interrupt. They watched her the way people watch a leaky pipe, not angry, just assessing how bad the mess is going to get. When they finally turned toward me, Karen stiffened. Sir, one of them said, holding up a hand to pause Karen mid-sentence. We need to hear from the property owner. Her mouth opened, closed. She stepped back like she'd been physically pushed. I walked over, folder in hand. Not dramatic. Just prepared. They inspected everything. Again. More thoroughly this time. They measured distances. They checked serial numbers. They traced lines. They photographed the red tag, the lock, the seal, the sticker that had started it all. One of them frowned. Who affixed this lock? Karen answered too fast. The board. With what authorization? The other asked. She hesitated. We believed. That's not authorization, he said, already writing. They asked me questions next. Calm ones. Precise ones. When did I notice the lock? What systems failed? Did anyone ask for access? Did anyone provide notice? No, I said, every time. Karen crossed her arms. This is excessive. The older inspector finally looked at her. Ma'am, you interfered with regulated utility access. It's on private property, she snapped. He didn't even blink. Which makes it worse. That landed like a dropped plate. They stepped aside to talk. Karen tried to join them. One of them subtly blocked her with his shoulder. I watched her confidence leak out, drip by drip. She wasn't shouting now. She wasn't smiling. She was quiet, eyes darting, recalculating. When they came back, the verdict was immediate. Red tag remains, the inspector said. Expanded scope. Karen's voice shook. Expanded how? Association-wide, he replied. We need records. What records? She asked. Any instance where the HOA modified, restricted, or accessed utilities or infrastructure. Silence. The inspector looked around. That includes internet, power, water, and access panels. Karen swallowed. "We'll be in touch," he said, handing her a card she didn't want. They left. The truck drove away. The street was quiet again. Karen turned on me. "You did this," she said. "No," I replied. "You did." Her face twisted. "You could have worked with us. You locked my utilities." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you have any idea what this could cost the association?" I met her stare. "Do you?" She stormed off without another word. That afternoon, the notices started going up. Real ones. On doors. On bulletin boards. On the clubhouse entrance. City review in progress. Do not modify utilities without authorization. Residents gathered in clusters, whispering. People who had never questioned Karen before were suddenly asking where the money went. Who approved what? Why no one had ever seen permit. My phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "She's losing it. Emergency board meeting tonight. Closed session." Closed session meant panic. I didn't attend this time. I didn't need to. The fallout came to me. At 9:47 p.m., my power dipped. Not off. Just enough to notice. At 9:49, my phone buzzed. An alert from the monitoring system. Unauthorized access attempt detected. I pulled up the camera feed I'd installed years ago and rarely checked. There was Karen, flashlight in hand, crouched beside the utility box, phone pressed to her ear. She was whispering. Furious. Desperate. She reached for the lock. I didn't yell. I didn't run outside. I called the number on the inspector's card. "There's an unauthorized access attempt happening right now," I said. "How unauthorized?" the voice asked. "By the same person who installed the lock." "Stay where you are," they said. I watched as Karen froze, light sweeping the yard when headlights turned onto the street. A familiar white truck. Another set behind it. She straightened slowly, phone dropping to her side. The inspectors stepped out, calm as ever. One of them spoke, voice carrying clearly. "Ma'am," he said. "Step away from the box." Karen didn't move. That was when I knew this had crossed the point of no return. And whatever authority she thought she had left, she was about to lose all of it. Karen stood frozen like a child caught with her hand in a cookie jar, except the cookie jar was a regulated utility box and the consequences were about to be a lot heavier than embarrassment. The inspectors didn't rush her. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They walked toward her at the same measured pace they'd used every other time, clipboards in hand, expressions flat. Authority doesn't need volume. "Phone down," one of them said. Karen hesitated, then lowered it slowly, like any sudden movement might make things worse. Her flashlight slipped from her fingers and thudded softly into the grass. "I was just checking something," she said, voice thin. The older inspector glanced at the lock, then at the red tag, then back at her. "At 10 o'clock at night. I'm the HOA president," she said quickly. "This is my responsibility." "That ended the moment you were instructed not to interfere," he replied. I stayed inside, watching through the window, heart steady but mind racing. This wasn't satisfying yet. It was unsettling. Because people like Karen don't implode quietly. They try to rewrite reality until the very last second. "What happens now?" she asked, folding her arms like it might protect her. The inspector didn't answer immediately. He took photos. More of them. Karen's position. The flashlight. The lock. The red tag she had ignored. "This constitutes a violation of a posted stop order," he finally said. "And an attempted reaccess." Her face drained of color. "I didn't remove anything." "You attempted to," he said. "Intent matters." Another truck pulled up. This one unmarked. A city logo on the door. Someone higher up. Karen's breathing went shallow. "This is ridiculous." "No," the newcomer said as he stepped out. "This is documented." They spoke quietly among themselves for a moment. Karen tried to listen, leaning in, but one of them gently but firmly held out a hand to keep her back. When they turned to her again, the tone had changed. "We're issuing a formal citation," the older inspector said. "This will be referred for enforcement review." For what? She demanded. Interference, noncompliance, misrepresentation of authority. Each word landed heavier than the last. You can't do this, she said. I was acting on behalf of the community. The man from the city glanced at her. The community didn't authorize this. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked around like someone might step forward and save her. No one did. They handed her paperwork. Real paperwork. She barely glanced at it before shoving it into her bag. You're all overreacting, she snapped. This will be cleared up. The inspector nodded. That's not up to us anymore. They left shortly after, removing nothing, changing nothing, leaving the lock and the red tag exactly where they were. Evidence preserved. Karen stood alone for a moment, staring at the box like it had betrayed her. Then she turned and walked away without looking back. The next morning, the email hit the entire neighborhood. Notice of Special Assessment Review. Notice of Compliance Investigation. Notice of Board Conduct Inquiry. 3 separate messages. 3 separate subjects. All from the city. Karen sent nothing. By noon, the group chat had turned feral. People were posting screenshots of fines from other communities. Asking who approved what. Asking why the HOA insurance carrier hadn't been informed. Someone asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Has Karen been doing this before? That was when the stories started coming out. A locked irrigation valve years ago. A forced internet reroute. A mysteriously restricted water meter during a dispute. Each one brushed off at the time as a misunderstanding. Patterns have a way of forming when you finally look backward. I got a knock at my door that afternoon. It was Mark again, except this time he wasn't smiling at all. She tried to get the board to vote retroactively, he said quietly. To cover it. I leaned against the doorframe. Did it work? He shook his head. Half of them walked out. That evening, another notice appeared on the clubhouse door. Emergency board session. Public observers allowed. That alone told me everything. I went. Karen wasn't at the front this time. She sat stiffly at the table, jaw clenched, eyes darting. The consultant wasn't there either. A different board member stood and cleared his throat. Due to ongoing investigations, Karen has been asked to step back from operational decisions. Murmurs filled the room. This is temporary, Karen snapped. No one responded. Then the treasurer spoke. We've been advised to suspend enforcement actions pending review. Karen slammed her hand on the table. You're undermining the board. No, someone said from the crowd. You did. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The room was doing the work for me. When the meeting ended, Karen stormed out again, faster this time, shoulders tight, control slipping through her fingers like sand. As I walked home, my phone buzzed with one final message from the city. Compliance hearing scheduled. HOA leadership required to attend. I stopped under a streetlight and read it twice. Karen had wanted authority without limit. What she was about to learn was that authority, when abused, doesn't just disappear. It turns around and starts asking questions. The compliance hearing wasn't held in a courtroom. It didn't need to be. Authority doesn't always wear robes. Sometimes it wears a conference badge and carries a tablet. The notice instructed HOA leadership to attend in person at the Municipal Services Building downtown. It didn't invite. It required. Karen arrived early, or at least that's what I heard later. By the time I walked into the bland, fluorescent-lit room, she was already seated at the long table, posture rigid, purse clutched like an anchor. 2 board members sat several chairs away from her, leaving a gap so wide it might as well have been a border. I took a seat in the observer section. Not front row. Not hiding either. The officials filed in quietly. No grand entrance. No announcements. Just clipboards, tablets, and the unmistakable confidence of people who already know what they're about to say. The chair of the panel didn't waste time. We are here to review documented interference with regulated utility access, she said, and associated governance actions. Karen straightened. I would like to state for the record. You'll have an opportunity, the chair interrupted calmly. When asked. That alone rattled her. They began with timelines, date, times, photos projected onto the screen, the lock, the sticker, the red tag, the attempted re-access at night. Karen's name appeared next to every entry. One board member shifted in his seat. Who authorized the installation of the lock? The chair asked. Karen opened her mouth. Before she could speak, the treasurer leaned forward. No formal vote was taken. The chair nodded, unfazed. Noted. Karen snapped her head toward him. That's not what we discussed. He didn't look at her. I'm answering the question. The room felt colder. The panel moved on to documentation. Or rather, the lack of it. No permit. No inspection request. No communication with utility providers. Karen finally got her turn. I acted in the interest of safety, she said. There were concerns. What concerns? The chair asked. Karen hesitated. Potential hazards. Documented by whom? Silence. She tried again. The board trusted my judgment. Another board member cleared her throat. We weren't aware of the lock until after it was installed. That one hurt. I saw it in Karen's eyes. Betrayal mixed with panic. The chair folded her hands. So to summarize, a lock was installed without authorization. A stop order was ignored. An attempted re-access occurred. And the board was not fully informed. Karen's voice rose. This is being exaggerated. The chair didn't raise hers. This is being recorded. Karen slumped back slightly. For the first time, she looked tired. The panel conferred quietly. Then the chair spoke again. Effective immediately, the association is prohibited from modifying or restricting any utility access pending full audit. Karen sat up. You can't freeze an entire HOA over one incident. The chair met her eyes. We already have. The words landed like a dropped hammer. They continued. Financial review. Insurance notification. Governance oversight. Training mandates. Each item stripped another layer of assumed authority. When it was over, the panel stood and left as quietly as they'd arrived. No gavel. No applause. Just consequences. Outside, Karen finally exploded. This is your fault, she hissed at me as I passed. I stopped, turned, looked at her properly for the first time in days. You locked my utilities, I said. She laughed bitterly. You could have handled this internally. I shook my head. You could have unlocked it. She stared at me, searching for something. Sympathy, guilt, control. She found none. By the end of the week, the audit began. Inspectors returned to the neighborhood, this time with binders and measuring tools. They reviewed everything. Internet cabinet, water meters, shared access points, things Karen had touched, things she hadn't documented. The neighborhood changed again. This time, not with rumors, but with clarity. People started asking better questions. Who approved this? Where's the permit? Why wasn't this disclosed? Karen stopped attending meetings. Then came the email. Notice of interim leadership assignment. Her name wasn't on it. I stood by the window that evening, watching the sun dip behind the houses, the red tag still fluttering on the utility box like a quiet witness. Karen had built her power on unchecked access. Now, access was exactly what she no longer had. And the story still wasn't finished. Karen didn't disappear quietly. People like her never do. They fade in stages, each one louder and more desperate than the last. The interim leadership wasted no time. Notices went out explaining the audit process in plain language, the kind Karen never used. Transparency became the new buzzword. Meetings were recorded. Votes were documented. Suddenly, everything had a paper trail. Karen hated that. She started showing up again, not at the front of the room, but in the back, arms crossed, whispering to anyone who would listen. She framed herself as a victim, a scapegoat, a warning of what happens when you challenge authority. The irony didn't escape anyone. Then the letters arrived. Certified mail. Thick envelopes. Not just for Karen, but for the HOA itself. Insurance carriers. Utility providers. The city. The association's policy was being reviewed due to undisclosed risk exposure. That phrase spread faster than any rumor. Homeowners panicked. Insurance gaps are the kind of thing that keep people up at night. Karen tried to spin it, claiming it was routine. No one believed her anymore. I got my own letter too. A request for a formal statement. I wrote it carefully. Just facts. Date. Actions. Outcomes. I attached photos. Logs. Emails. The red tag. No emotion. No accusations. Facts don't need volume. The next board meeting was the most crowded I'd ever seen it. Karen sat in the front row this time, chin high, daring anyone to look at her. The interim chair stood and spoke calmly. We've received preliminary findings. A murmur ran through the room. Multiple instances of unauthorized utility interference have been identified, she continued, including actions predating the current incident. Every head turned toward Karen. Her lips pressed into a thin line. These actions expose the association to significant liability, the chair said. As a result, we are considering formal censure. Karen stood abruptly. You can't blame everything on me. The chair didn't flinch. We're not. We're addressing documented actions. Karen's voice rose. I was protecting this community. Someone near the back spoke up. From what? Silence. Karen looked around, searching for allies. She found none. This is harassment, she said, quieter now. I gave years to this board. The interim chair nodded. And those years are part of the record. The vote was swift, public, recorded. Motion passed. Karen was formally censured, removed from any advisory role, barred from accessing association systems during the remainder of the audit. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She laughed. A short, brittle sound. You'll regret this. No one responded. Outside, as people filtered out, she stopped me again. You think this makes you a hero, she said. I think it makes me someone with power, I replied. Which is different. Her eyes flashed. You don't know what I can still do. I looked past her, at the neighborhood, at the houses, at the systems quietly working the way they always should have. I know what you can't do, I said. Touch my utilities. That was when she finally looked defeated. Not angry. Not indignant. Small. A week later, the red tag came down. The inspector removed it himself, signing off on the resolution after the lock was documented, removed, and logged as evidence. My internet stabilized. The alerts stopped. The systems hummed along like nothing had ever happened. But the fallout kept rolling. Karen's name appeared in another notice. Notice of Individual Compliance Review. This one wasn't addressed to the HOA. It was addressed to her. I folded the paper carefully and set it aside. Because at that point, I didn't need to watch anymore. The system she'd tried to control was doing exactly what it was designed to do. And it was almost finished. Karen didn't disappear quietly. People like her never do. They fade in stages, each one louder and more desperate than the last. The interim leadership wasted no time. Notices went out explaining the audit process in plain language, the kind Karen never used. Transparency became the new buzzword. Meetings were recorded. Votes were documented. Suddenly, everything had a paper trail. Karen hated that. She started showing up again, not at the front of the room, but in the back, arms crossed, whispering to anyone who would listen. She framed herself as a victim, a scapegoat, a warning of what happens when you challenge authority. The irony didn't escape anyone. Then the letters arrived. Certified mail. Thick envelopes. Not just for Karen, but for the HOA itself. Insurance carriers. Utility providers. The city. The association's policy was being reviewed due to undisclosed risk exposure. That phrase spread faster than any rumor. Homeowners panicked. Insurance gaps are the kind of thing that keep people up at night. Karen tried to spin it, claiming it was routine. No one believed her anymore. I got my own letter too. A request for a formal statement. I wrote it carefully. Just facts. Date. Actions. Outcomes. I attached photos. Logs. Emails. The red tag. No emotion. No accusations. Facts don't need volume. The next board meeting was the most crowded I'd ever seen it. Karen sat in the front row this time, chin high, daring anyone to look at her. The interim chair stood and spoke calmly. We've received preliminary findings. A murmur ran through the room. Multiple instances of unauthorized utility interference have been identified, she continued, including actions predating the current incident. Every head turned toward Karen. Her lips pressed into a thin line. These actions expose the association to significant liability, the chair said. As a result, we are considering formal censure. Karen stood abruptly. You can't blame everything on me. The chair didn't flinch. We're not. We're addressing documented actions. Karen's voice rose. I was protecting this community. Someone near the back spoke up. From what? Silence. Karen looked around, searching for allies. She found none. This is harassment, she said, quieter now. I gave years to this board. The interim chair nodded. And those years are part of the record. The vote was swift, public, recorded, motion passed. Karen was formally censured, removed from any advisory role, barred from accessing association systems during the remainder of the audit. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She laughed. A short, brittle sound. You'll regret this. No one responded. Outside, as people filtered out, she stopped me again. You think this makes you a hero, she said. I think it makes me someone with power, I replied. Which is different. Her eyes flashed. You don't know what I can still do. I looked past her, at the neighborhood, at the houses, at the systems quietly working the way they always should have. I know what you can't do, I said. Touch my utilities. That was when she finally looked defeated. Not angry. Not indignant. Small. A week later, the red tag came down. The inspector removed it himself, signing off on the resolution after the lock was documented, removed, and logged as evidence. My internet stabilized. The alerts stopped. The systems hummed along like nothing had ever happened. But the fallout kept rolling. Karen's name appeared in another notice. Notice of Individual Compliance Review. This one wasn't addressed to the HOA. It was addressed to her. I folded the paper carefully and set it aside. Because at that point, I didn't need to watch anymore. The system she'd tried to control was doing exactly what it was designed to do. And it was almost finished. The final notice didn't arrive with drama. No sirens. No confrontations. Just an envelope slid into my mailbox one quiet afternoon, thick enough to matter. I recognized the return address immediately. Municipal Compliance Division. I opened it at my kitchen counter, the same place where this whole mess had started, coffee gone cold, paperwork spread out like a crime scene. Inside was a summary. Dry. Clinical. Unemotional. Findings substantiated. Authority exceeded. Corrective actions enforced. Karen's name appeared only twice. Once in the list of violations. Once in the list of outcomes. She was prohibited from serving on any HOA board within city jurisdiction for 5 years. Required to complete compliance training before participating in any neighborhood governance. Personally fined for interference with regulated utilities. Personally. Not the association. Not the community. Her favorite shield had been taken away. I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That evening, the neighborhood felt different. Quieter. Not tense. Settled. Like a room after someone finally stops shouting. The interim board sent out one last email summarizing the changes. New procedures. Mandatory permit. Direct city contact for utilities. A line stood out near the bottom. No individual board member may act unilaterally on infrastructure matters. It felt obvious now. It always should have been. A few days later, I saw Karen one last time. She was standing by her car, loading boxes into the trunk. No clipboard. No entourage. Just cardboard and silence. She noticed me watching and hesitated, like she was deciding whether to say something. She chose to speak. "They ruined everything," she said. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the street, the houses, the lines running quietly beneath the ground, doing their jobs without drama. "You ruined your authority," I said finally. "Not the community." She shook her head, bitter. "People needed someone in charge. They needed someone accountable," I replied. She closed her trunk harder than necessary and got into the driver's seat. The engine started. She didn't look back when she pulled away. The utility box sat exactly where it always had, now unlocked, inspected, boring. The way it was supposed to be. No sticker. No lock. No drama. A week later, the HOA held elections. New faces. Short speeches. Lots of questions. The kind of boring that keeps systems running. I didn't run. I didn't need to. Some victories don't require a title. That night, I stepped outside, checked the box once more out of habit, and smiled at how ordinary it looked. Karen had tried to control something that was never hers. And in doing so, she'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Power doesn't come from clipboards or locks. It comes from knowing where the line is, and not crossing it.